Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review here in the midst of my Texas Chainsaw Massacre reviews. This is the review for number, let me think for a second, number 6, I think? Maybe? Number 7. Number 7, Texas Chainsaw, or as it was known when it came out in the theatrical release, Texas Chainsaw 3D. Yes, this movie was released in 3D, and as you can tell, Leatherface shows up in it looking like a Slipknot band member. This is a movie that I saw one time, probably closer to 2014 than 2013, maybe even 2015, somewhere in that ballpark. I did not like it at all. Mainly because it's got its moments. It has a good concept set up. It's a little confused on when it takes place. It's kind of like if you read the script for Halloween Returns from years ago, the film that was unmade, it was supposed to be made before Halloween 2018, then you probably realize that film had the same crisis this movie had of being kind of a requel, but also not knowing whether it took place once upon a time in the olden days or nowadays with cell phones. This film has the exact same problem. Do you want to know where that probably came from? Well, there is a scriptwriter on the film who, as soon as I saw the name a moment ago, that I don't think anybody ever talked about this around me in a video on YouTube or anything, about who was involved with this film, that immediately explained all of the issues I have with this fucking garbage movie. It's not the worst film of the series, just in case you want to know. That name that was tied to this, that helped write this piece of shit, was Adam Marcus. If you don't know who Adam Marcus is, well, you probably can't see that because of the glare. He directed and wrote Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell. For a man who doesn't understand Jason Voorhees, all the years later in 2013, for an hour and a half, they brought him on to work on a Leatherface movie. And he helped ruin this one too. This is not, again, the worst film in the series, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad overall, if I'm being honest with you. Now, this is the thing. What is this movie? Well, the previous film came out in 2006. This film coming out 7 years later is a complete requel. It's like a soft reboot, whatever, tied directly to the original 1974 film. It ignores every sequel before it, as many of the franchise's sequels have done. The soft reboot thing is the thing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies do constantly, as many of you know. And this one is no different. It decides to skip everything and go right back to being a sequel to the original film. But again, the time frame here makes no sense. Is it a sequel that takes place in, like, the 90s? Or is it taking place nowadays, in 2013 at that time, when the film was released, with cell phones? It doesn't make any sense. Now, what happened in this movie? Well, it basically picks up as soon as the events of the original movie end. We have a sheriff or a deputy, whatever this guy is, going out to the Sawyer house. And there basically happens to be an angry mob that shows up as well that burns down the Sawyer house after a big shootout that happens between the rednecks and the bad cannibal rednecks, and Leatherface gets caught in the middle of that. And there is a young woman who one guy comes across that happens to be holding a baby, and he kills her, takes the baby away, and that baby grows up to be the very beautiful, very talented Alexandria Daddario, who reminds me of Zooey Deschanel. Every time I see her, I can never tell the two apart for whatever reason. Now, this film was filled with people you know, like Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son. Trey Songz is in this. The one chick that was the girl that Malcolm has a crush on in Malcolm in the Middle that grew up, if you will. If you've seen that show, you probably know what I'm talking about. She's in this as well, as Trey Songz' kind of cheating love interest thing. It's really weird. All of these people I knew, all of them I like and I respect, and I think they're well-talented people. But they got a bad script, they got a decent director to make this movie, and then so many things fell apart, like the Adam Marcus thing, like so many other things in this film. It has constant issues. Now, Zooey Deschanel's twin, Alexandria Daddario, I cannot get her name right to save my life, she gets a letter in the mail that tells her grandmother passed away. Well, she thought all of her grandparents were gone. Apparently, this is a blood relative she didn't know about. There's a whole other side to her life that she never knew about. She is adopted. She didn't know. Her parents didn't tell her. So she goes out to Texas and happens to go visit this house that she inherited from her grandmother passing away. And everybody that she meets, including the guy who kind of is the lawyer who passes on the home to her, gives her like this kind of weird thing. Everybody's being weird about this house and about the history behind it. Nobody seems to want to talk to her about it. I guess they assume she knows about the history, but it's kind of interesting. Anyway, she and her friends go out there. They also pick up a hitchhiker at one point, and kind of a cool little tradition of the original movie. I liked that. And while she's there, it turns out Leatherface himself lives down in the basement of the house. And he comes out when things start to go awry, and he attacks them. And she, being a Sawyer relative, does not realize that she's probably related to this guy. So things are a little weird, as you can tell. It has a very much a family element to it that I think completely, utterly, in one simple line in the finale of the film, shits the bed. Absolutely. I think it just... The movie is such a goofy mess. Sometimes, not always. Most of the time I think it's fairly watchable, sometimes more watchable than the remake or the prequel to the remake from 2006, the previous movies. Sometimes it is a fairly watchable film that I don't hate at all. It just doesn't really have everything going for it that I think the film and the series deserved, with so many bad entries left and right. I've heard people, like the Skeleton Crew podcast, defend the hell out of the film and say it's one of their favorites in the series. I understand why. I understand the attention to detail that people really appreciate. I understand why people really like this movie and consider it one of the best of the sequels. To me, again, it's a mess. I think there's so many things that are wrong with this movie that really, again, shit the bed. Too often. Too often. The acting can be good, and then it's ruined by bad lines or bad scenes or anything like that. There are pretty much no tense moments at all. We just kind of get jump scare after jump scare, really stupid actions committed by basically every character in the film. I don't care who we're talking about. I don't know. It's a mess of a film. The writing is not strong here, as you can tell. Leatherface himself, again, looks like a Slipknot member from the band, and I can't stand the look of him here. I think it's awful. The mask looks so big and goofy. He looks like an alien. You know, he just looks like an alien made out of seeds or something. It's awful. I hate it. It's an ugly version of Leatherface, plain and simple. One of the worst, easily. Now, with that being said, the look of the movie, the mansion that this girl inherits, the look of that, the way it's shot, all of that is beautiful. I really, really like it, and I really appreciate that. It's just everything else that came with this movie that, again, is a mess, almost entirely. I really think that this is a great example of a movie that when it has practical effects, moving along, segueing, whatever, when it has practical effects, they typically look amazing. They look really good most of the time. And then every once in a while, we completely switch, and I assume, if I had to bet, that these are from reshoots. I'd be willing to bet that a lot of these are from reshoots. When we go to like what I consider the reshoot territory, we have CGI kills. They look like total shit. They look awful. They look so bad. They have aged even worse in the last 10 years since this movie came out, that I don't even have words for it. Unless you've seen the film recently, you probably don't remember how bad they look. The CGI reshoot kills is what I call them. Like I said, they look worse and worse every time I see the film, which out of the 2 times I have seen it at this current moment, they overshadow the really great practical effects that we have at certain times in this film. And again, most of the kills in here are practical effects. They look fantastic. With the decent acting, they work really well. I really like that. Now, there's not really any music to the movie. When there is, it's kind of generic for 2013. Very much like the 2006 and 2003 remakes had kind of their own little generic music to them too. They felt more like a CW type of music. I talked about that in my reviews. This just feels like generic 2013 horror movie slasher wannabe fodder music. You know, that's really what it is. It doesn't really have anything special going for it, and that's kind of a shame. It just feels like Texas Chainsaw 3D with the goofiest ass title I've ever heard in my life. And now that it doesn't have the 3D anymore because it's just Texas Chainsaw, that's even worse. It's just a bad movie almost all around. But again, it's not the worst of the series. I don't even consider this to be like underneath average. This is as bland and goofy and again messy because of the time framing, the nonsensical storyline, the horrible ending that I don't understand how we went to the route we went with Leatherface by the end of this movie. It's stupid. The whole thing is stupid. I think it's bad. Plain and simple. It's a bad movie and a bad franchise. A film that should have never existed, probably. And again, the idea of being a direct sequel to the original film, a requel, is a cool idea. I like the idea. This is the same thing they did last year in 2022. Not even 9 years later. We did the exact same thing again. That's how fucked up the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies are. Totally. 1000%. This film has its benefits. Most of the time, it shits the bed. Like I said, it's not a good flick. If I had to rate Texas Chainsaw, or Texas Chainsaw 3D, whatever you want to call this piece of crap, on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it like a 3 out of 5. It has its moments. You know, the people that I thought would be really bad, like when this was advertised back in the day, I kept hearing people talk about Trey Songz. Not a fan of Trey Songz, like at all. He wasn't bad here. He was fine. I actually really liked him quite a bit. I guess, until certain things happened in the movie. Anyway, Texas Chainsaw 3D. What did you think about this piece of crap? I'd love to hear what you have to say down in the comment section down below. Again, 3 out of 5 for me. I think it just... Why? Why would you even make this? Adam Marcus being involved with his weird Jason Goes to Hell fingertips touching all over this piece of shit. That just screams the explanation for everything to me. It does. All the ego, all of the he thinks he's better than the fans, like he did with Friday the 13th. I feel like he's involved with that shit here too. I don't know if he was the final screenwriter. There was like 4 writers on this movie. It irritates me. It's plain and simple. Now I have one more movie to review. Of course, I already talked about the 2022 film last year, and now I just have the 2017 film Leatherface, the 8th film. 8th? Yeah. 8th film in the franchise to review, and then I'm done. Then I can rank these movies and never have to talk about them again. Ever. Because man, oh man, I am so ready to be done. After what I've sat through with part 2, and then kind of elements of part 3, and then 4, for God's sake, is horrible too. Then this one is bad. Elements of the remake and the prequel, whatever, are all bad. It has been one thing after another with the series, and I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to be done. Anyway, with that being said, what did you think about Texas Chainsaw? Again, please put those thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what all of you have to say. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you all, and goodbye.